Hello, I'm Seeks97. Today I'm showing you how to create your own crop, so like wheat crop for Minecraft. So the things we'll be creating is obviously the crop, which involves creating a block, which is the original crop, which would be it as you plant it, completely ungrown. And then we'll have to create loads of ints, which will hold our textures for each stage of growth. We'll also have to create a seed for planting it, plant, so what's dropped when it's fully grown. And I've just created food to show you that this plant works. So like when you drop it from a fully grown crop, it actually makes this bread. So about what you need, and also about what you need to register, what you need to add names for, and what you don't. Textures, and a few stuff like putting textures here instead of down the bottom. Then we'll have to create this external class called block pink plant. So in this tutorial I'll be making a pink plant. So looks really complicated, but it's actually simpler than it looks. It's basically copying code from existing crop class and then editing such things as what's dropped. This ID picked, which I'm not sure what it does, but I still change it anyway. As well as the stages of growth, so the texture at each stage, and a few other things. And then, in order to have your crop to be fertilized, when you right click bone meal, we'll have to edit a bit of texture, as you can see here. I have to edit a bit of texture, edit a bit of code in this existing class called item dye in order for that to happen. So we're doing that this episode, so I hope you enjoy this and follow along and pause at points you want to, just to like write down the code, because I feel the best way to learn is to listen to the code, then write it off by heart, and if anything's wrong, just look back at it. So let's get started. So after that long intro, we're going to get started in the code, and the first thing we're going to do is declare the crop. Now the crop is obviously a block. It rhymes. Anyway, so we're going to declare it as a block, obviously, and it's going to have the texture of a crop as if it's ungrown, so the first ever texture it has. So when you right click a seed down, it's just got that tiny bit of this kind of stalk kind of thing sticking out. That's what we're going to be putting as the texture of this. So we're going to declare it inside a Mongoose class file, public static final block, and then put our name. So I'm going to put pink plant crop because that's what I'll be making. Make all the capitals right. Anyway, equals new block pink plant, or whatever you called your crop. So this is the block class file that you saw at the start. We'll be creating that later. Put brackets, and the first thing you need to do is the ID 140, let's say. And the next one you do is texture. Now you in previous block tutorials you see me put 0 and then declare it down here somewhere. But we're going to do something different, which makes it 100% work all the time. And it's by putting that override method here. So modloader.add override, and we're going to be overriding terrain.png with our texture, which is inside a folder called pp, and it's called crop0.png, I believe. Let me just check this. Yes, I'm in there. We'll be coming to this later. Crop0, yes, that's correct. That's our texture. And then after the very last bracket, we put dot set hardness, which is important. And in the brackets, put 0.0f, which means that when you hit it with your hand, it destroys instantly. Then dot set block name pink plant crop, and then you can put a semicolon, and just before that semicolon we just put two more things. One's called disable single stats, and then one's dot set requires self notify. Hopefully there's no errors there. Okay, that's good. So if I just go through this again, and I'll come to talking that at the end. We've declared it, we've said it's a new block pink plant, which we'll create later, and it's going to have an ID and our texture, which instead of putting 0, we'll overwrite it here. We set the hardness to 0, we add our block name, and then there's these two things here, disable stats and dot set require self notify. This, I think it says it has to tell itself when to grow at random rates. I'm not sure what this does though, but every time you put that in, it makes a crop work. So make sure you've got these at the end and declared it, and that's our main block crop plant thing declared. So now the second thing we're going to create is the seed. So the seed that we'll add a recipe for later, but it's where you right click it onto fertile ground. That's the main thing. You right click onto fertile ground and it plants this block. So we need to declare something else and put public static final item pink plant seeds equals new item seed. I think, is it item seed? Item seeds plural brackets, and now I have three things we need to put in here. First is ID, obviously, so I'll put 1200 or something. Actually, let's put the ID from the start, which is 1233, I think. And now the second thing is what the block is. So what block is planted, or what crop in this case is planted when you right click. So we put mod underscore pink plant dot, and it's going to be this pink plant crop block dot block ID. Yeah. And then the third thing we need to put in is what it can grow on, and we want it to grow on fertile ground, so we put block dot tilled field, which is fertile ground in the code, dot block ID. And then obviously we dot set item name, put pink plant seeds, semicolon at the end, and that's our seeds declared, which has three crucial things inside the brackets after new item seeds, which is the ID, what is planted when it's right clicked, and what it can grow on, so block.tilled field, which is fertile ground. Next thing we're going to declare, which is going to be quite quick compared to the last two things, is the item that's dropped, so the pink plant, yeah, so like when you destroy a wheat crop, it drops wheat, so we want this to drop pink plant, but obviously we need to declare it, so we put public static final item pink plant equals new item given ID, so just one more than the last one, dot set item name, and then you just put pink plant. Make sure this item here has a capital, which I forgot to do, and that's our pink plant declared, ready for us to use later. And now I'm going to declare a food just to show that this pink plant item works when it's dropped by the crop. So we put public static final item pink plant bread equals new item food, and then we need to put an ID. How many half hearts it will heal when it's eaten, so 6 half hearts, I mean hunger level, so 6 means it will fill 3 full bars of your hunger level. 1F, I think it just means chance or saturation level. I still understand what that does, but 1F basically, and then put full so you can't feed it to a wolf. Dot set item name pink plant bread. And if you don't understand any of this code for the food, then watch my previous item food tutorial, which is 1.2.5, but it'll still work for 1.3.2 the same way. So that's our food declared. So with crops there are 8 stages of growth, so therefore there needs to be 8 different textures for each level of growth, so the first level being completely ungrown, and then the 8th being fully grown, and when you destroy we'll be able to drop the plant. So as again with numbers in Java, the first one starts at 0, and that first texture is with our block pink plant crop block thing. So that means there are 7 more textures remaining that we need to declare, and that's what we're going to do now. So here we're going to put public static int, and then give it a name, so crop 1, and then we need to put equals mod loader dot add override, and we need to override terrain.png with our second texture, which is pp crop1.png, which is one more than the last texture, semicolon at the end, and that's our first texture int done. So now what I've done is I've copied this first int we did, I've copied it and pasted it 6 more times and changed the number in order, so 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and same here. So we have our 8 textures, which are the first one being the block index texture for our crop, and then we've got the next 6 stages, and then the very last one, which is the 8th stage, is fully grown. So crop7.png will be our fully grown texture for our crop. Now usually at this point you see me auto fill in all this public void load stuff, and I'll just say this is what you need to do. But because there's certain things that you need to register and certain things you don't register, don't add names for, only register block, I'm going to do those specific bits now. So the first thing I'm going to do is this pink plant crop block. Obviously we need to register it because it's a block and it needs to be registered. So modloader.register block pink plant crop. But what we do not need to do is to add a name for it, because if you add a name, it will be available for us, anyone in survival, anyone in like creative mode to get. But we don't want this visible. Only place it can be visible is when it's planted and it's grown. So we don't add the name, and again we don't need to add the texture because it's here already. Besides that, everything else is the same as it would always be. So these three items, you add the name and add the textures. And for recipes, we've got our first recipe which creates these seeds, which is basically putting a normal seed into a crafting table, sorry. And the second thing is the bread, which is the same pattern as a bread, but instead of using wheat, we use this pink plant. So that is those done, and our whole model school class file done. So now we can get on to doing this block pink plant. It had to happen, at least once in this video it had to happen, a massive mistake. At the very start of this video, we created our block, and we put those two things at the end, .disable stats and .set requires self-notify. Now I did two things wrong. The first thing was, after each one, we need to put 2 brackets in order for the code to correct itself. The next thing was, I spelt this wrong, because obviously I get A stars in all of my spelling tests, yes. But that's basically those errors fixed that I did wrong. So I'm sorry about that, but hopefully you fixed them now, and we can get on to properly making this block pink plant class. And while you open, we don't need you at item die. So yeah, we can get on to creating the code for this block pink plant now.